Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Meta Update, where we aim to cover which heroes and which builds are the most meta at the moment so that you guys can go ahead and win your games. And now you can use this information to help you win your ranked games. Let's get into it. First thing I want to cover is the fact that melee canceling is back into the game. So if you have melee charge and, for example, Fleetfoot, you can actually start your melee animation and then cancel it by using the item, allowing you to go extremely far. This is due to the melee charge duration. You can still cancel your melee even if you don't have melee charge. So if I sell it here and I go for a melee, I can always cancel it using Fleetfoot in order to bait out parries and things like that. This is a pretty useful tech, and I wanted to let you guys know that it's back in the game and it might be here to stay. We don't know yet. Let's get into the builds. So if you guys have been watching my stream a lot, you know that I've been playing a lot of melee Shiv. I have my build in game called Deathy's Melee Shiv, so I would highly encourage you guys to check it out. The idea of why melee Shiv is so strong is that you are very, very tanky with your bloodletting passive. You defer a percentage of the damage, and building around melee, a lot of the melee items give you a decent amount of tankiness. Melee charge gives you health, life strike gives you health, berserker gives you bullet resist, restorative shot makes you tanky, torment pulse gives you health. Overall, you're more building like a tank, and melee is just one of your ways to deal damage. You also deal a decent amount of gun damage and spirit damage as well, so you're kind of like doing a lot of different types of damage. Full credit, this build was inspired from Average Jonas's build. I just made some modifications because there are certain items that I didn't think were necessarily needed. Lady Geist has been seeing a lot more play in the past 2 weeks, and this patch has not changed that. There are a few ways to play Lady Geist, so I can't really cover all of them. Most of them seem to be good, so there seems to be the Spirit Lady Geist, the Gun Lady Geist, and the Hybrid one. I think the Hybrid one is probably the best for the average player. So the build that I'm showcasing here is the CARBATTERY build, aka Buds. So you can look this up in-game. This is mostly Spirit-based. There's a little bit of gun with Berserker and things like that. And the idea with Mystic Reverb is that you'll put Mystic Reverb on Malice, and then you can basically spam Malice and then spam Mystic Reverb off cooldown, right? So as you're spamming Malice, your Mystic Reverb gets applied basically off cooldown, and it's very strong, and it's a huge AoE, so it's just extremely oppressive to play against. And then Lady Geist just builds to be tanky with a lot of lifesteal with things like Leech and stuff like that. And she just feels like pretty oppressive at the moment. I think she's very strong. Let's talk about Grey Talon. So I want to say I'm not convinced that Grey Talon is good, but I feel like I need to talk about it in the meta update because it did get a significant amount of changes, which do make the hero better. So the hero's scaling got reworked, where basically now when you get Spirit, you get extra weapon damage, but you no longer get movement speed. This is a really big deal. So the movement speed definitely hurts his Spirit build a little bit. But the weapon damage scaling is really good if you want to go weapon damage with this hero. So the build that I'd recommend you guys try is the Lystic Gun Talon. It's a pretty bare bones build, right? So feel free to add things in there yourself. But I think that the idea is good. So you scale a little bit of spirit, but you're mostly scaling your gun and your flight. And now with the 4 stamina change as well as the flight, you actually feel like decently mobile in your flight, and you can actually move around a decent amount. And you do a lot more damage because the spirit scaling scales your base damage, which is then further amplified with weapon items. So I think that this hero can do like a really, really good amount of damage. I'm not convinced that he's good yet because he still has similar issues that he had before. But I think that if people aren't buying knockdown and aren't going on you, the amount of damage that he can output is really, really insane. Let's talk a little bit about Mirage. So it's been some time since Mirage came out, and a lot of things have changed. A lot of changes to items, to the hero, etc. So where am I at in terms of Mirage builds? I would say that there's a few Mirage builds that are viable at the moment. People will either build around his passive, or they'll build around the Scarabs a little bit more, or both. So the idea is either you'll go some type of gun build. So for example, I've got my in-game build Deathy's Gun Mirage, which is a little bit more focused on the gun, a little bit on the passive and on the Scarabs, and the Tornado is just like extra utility. And you can always go Echo Shard late game for the Tornado. This is still really good. Echo Shard Tornado is always going to be good unless they like nerf Tornado to the ground, because Tornado allows you to dodge spells, it allows you to be survivable, it gives you bullet evasion chance, and it controls the enemies. So there's a couple builds you guys can try. I'd recommend you guys give Deathy's Gun Mirage a try. It's a combination of a couple of meta builds by other people, such as Bud, such as Line Pro, such as Mikhail's, etc. There are a bunch of other items that you could fit in here. For example, you could fit Kinetic Dash in here. You could fit Swift Striker in here if you like just more fire rate. So I encourage you guys to experiment, but yeah, feel free to try this build. Mirage is still really, really good, I think, and I believe that he's pretty meta, and especially if you're playing without any coordinated teammates, it's super powerful to just be able to teleport on any teammate and help them at any time. All right, everybody's greatest Bane this patch, 7. This hero was largely considered to not be that great before this patch, and now he's considered to be probably one of the better heroes of the patch. Why is that? There's a couple of reasons. So obviously, you know, he did get a couple of buffs. One of the main things that I think is the overall meta changes affect 7 significantly. So the jungle now spawns a lot earlier, and the laning stage is now a lot more about just defending your tower, shoving the lane, and then farming the jungle. This is extremely beneficial for 7 because he's got his huge ball, which allows him to farm the jungle very effectively, as well as power surge. So he's probably got the most farming abilities out of any hero in the game right now. And this meta has just favored him a lot. The other thing is his health regen in lane is now significantly higher with a base health regen of 3. This means that he's just like really hard to beat in lane, especially with his other abilities, because, you know, all he needs to do is just get extra regen, and then he basically has like 6 or 7 health regen, and you're probably not going to kill him unless you basically go for an all-in on him. The build that I'm showing off here is Mobalytics Ball 7 by Rina. There's a lot of builds, but the Ball 7 is the one that has been, you know, showcased the most. This build is impossible to push into. Like, good luck trying to take walkers or guardians or things like that if you have to push into the giant ball. To give you guys an idea of what the ball looks like without even all the items, so this is just with Divine Barrier, Mystic Reach, and the ball maxed. The ball is already this big. And now if you get improved reach, the ball gets significantly bigger, and so it just covers like an entire area. Like, imagine you're trying to push into a walker and there's just a ball right there. So once again, the in-game build, Mobalytics Ball 7 by Rina VX. Feel free to check it out. Let's talk a little bit about items. So this is going to be a shorter section than in previous patches because items were not that affected this patch. Most items that were touched were nerfed. There were only a few items that were actually buffed, and the buffs don't seem to be significant enough for the items to overtake the meta. So one item I don't want to touch on is melee charge. It did get nerfed. I think it's still incredibly powerful just for the stats that it gives, for the utility, for the fact that melee items are pretty good. And the second thing is, if you get an item like Fleetfoot, which allows you to melee cancel, you can pretty much go flying on any hero with this item. I think that this tech is underrated at the moment and will probably be used more because it's not like buying Fleetfoot and melee charge is bad. Those items both give you good utility and they allow you to just basically go flying whenever you want. For people that don't know how to do this tech, all you need to do is look up heavy punch, and then as you're about to stop or as you're doing your punch, you press Fleetfoot like this. And then you can slide to keep your momentum and do a little bunny hopping like this. And this allows you to clear a lot of distance very quickly. I'll make a video elaborating more on this. Another item that I believe does deserve its spot in the spotlight is Spiritual Overflow. It got reworked. I think it's a huge buff. Basically, it used to give 20% fire rate all the time. Now it gives 35% fire rate, but only when it's active. However, it's really easy to get active because, as you can see, all I needed to do is 7 was shoot 2 bursts on someone, and now Spiritual Overflow is active for 18 seconds, giving me the 50 spirit power, which got buffed, by the way. It used to be 45, and 35% fire rate instead of 20. So I believe when you're fighting, this is just straight up a huge buff by 15% fire rate and 5 spirit power, and I think that this item is really good right now. That's it for the item category. There's a lot of items that are still really, really good, and I encourage you guys to look at previous meta updates to see what items were good then, because a lot of them are still really good. This includes, for example, Divine Barrier, which still has a lot of potential, and items like that. However, none of them were changed significantly, and therefore I'm not including them in this meta report. Let's talk tier list. So a lot of people always ask me, oh, what's your new tier list based on the patch? So here it is. I'm not going to talk on it for extremely long, but I do want to touch on a couple things that I think are interesting with the current meta. So first of all, S tier, Shiv, McGinnis, Lady Geist, 7, Kelvin. I would say the S tier was kind of hard to make. I think all of these heroes are incredibly strong. I think Shiv is probably one of the strongest heroes in the game at the moment, just like incredibly tanky. He did get nerfed yesterday, but I don't really think the nerf matters that much. His ultimate is still just a 28% health execute that refreshes on kill, so he can execute like 3-4 people, and just provides a lot to the team. I do think that the knife build as well still works, so I think tank / melee Shiv or knife Shiv both work. And I think Weapon Shiv works too. The only Shiv build that I'm not a big fan of is the Slice and Dice, where you focus specifically on Slice and Dice. I don't think that build is as great. McGinnis and Lady Geist, I've already touched on them a little bit. McGinnis, nothing really has changed. She got nerfed from 25% spirit resist to 15% bullet resist. This has made her worse, but she was already like so good that she still played. She can be played as a support. She can be played as a turret build. She can be played as a gun build. There are lots of different variations, and all of them seem to be pretty good at the moment. 7 I've touched on, just very large orbs that terrorize that terrorize your server. It's not really fun to play against. And Kelvin, I still think, is incredibly powerful. The nade build does a lot of damage. He provides a ton of utility. His ultimate is still really good. His beam is really good, and he just like moves around the map so fast. In A tier, I think Pocket, yeah, was nerfed, but I think Pocket is still really, really good. Yeah, I don't think this hero's gutted at all. I think Lash is still really, really good. He was nerfed a little bit, so I don't think he's like no longer S tier, but he feels still pretty good. However, his damage is a little bit lower and his heal's a little bit lower. Abram still feels really good. The A tier is not in order, by the way. Infernus still feels really good, even though he was nerfed. Hayes was actually buffed significantly, and so she feels a lot better now, and so I think that she's more in line with a lot of the other characters. And all I want to say about A tier is that there's a lot of characters that feel really good right now. I do also want to say that this tier list is for just pub gameplay, so this is not a tournament tier list. If this was a tournament tier list, I would take Paradox and I would put her in S tier probably, just because Paradox is so good in organized play. But I think in your average games, Paradox is no longer as good. She's still really, really good in organized play, however, because swap is just inherently insane. B tier are all characters that are playable, but like I don't think are as amazing. I put Yamato there. Yamato could also be considered an A tier. I don't think she's like that weak. And same for Warden. Bebop got hit pretty significantly with the hook changes, and Dynamo in general just hasn't been seeing as much success recently. McGinnis being meta definitely hurts Dynamo as well, because McGinnis wall, when you max it, cancels the black hole. So there's a few ways to just cancel the black hole right now, which make it kind of hard. You have to go unstoppable, etc. The main takeaway from this is that I think that we're in a pretty good spot balance wise with the heroes. I think that a lot of the S tier heroes definitely need to be looked at a little bit, and maybe some of the B tier heroes need to be buffed slightly. But right now, in terms of balance, I think that we're in a pretty good patch where a lot of heroes actually feel pretty viable, as long as you have like a team comp that makes sense together. The one hero that I think needs the most love at the moment is Vindicta. This hero, I don't know if it just hasn't been figured out yet. Maybe there's a way to build her that people haven't been doing, but this hero does not feel great right now. I haven't seen a lot of Vindicta in my games. I haven't seen any Vindicta have success really. So I think that this hero is, definitely C tier, maybe even D tier, but definitely not looking good at the moment. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, if you have feedback, feel free to leave it in the comments. I do try to read as many comments as I can, and I hope you guys have a good day.